Right, welcome back to the program. You're still watching Daily Politics on Trust TV. Let's double down on this conversation of press freedom in Nigeria, especially looking at some of the shackles that continue to inundate the profession as well as the professionals, especially considering some of the actions of state agencies like the DSS, the police, and many others who have over the past years intervened in the operations of journalists across Nigeria. And let's bring in our next guest, who is someone who is going to speak from a point of experience, because you might recall in the first quarter of this year, 2024, the news broke of the abduction of then editor of First News. And of course, that pretty much highlighted the ongoing battle that journalists continue to face in the pursuit and discharge of their duties as professionals in Nigeria today. Let's bring in Segun Olatunji, the former editor of First News, into the conversation. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program. Good evening, and thank you so much for your time.
Good evening. It's my pleasure being here.
Right. We're talking about something which is a no-brainer for you: press freedom, and your professional practice has been, the source of a concern for the people in the position of power, for instance. From your experience earlier this year, how important is this conversation, especially in the context of the practice of journalism vis-a-vis its impact and importance to society?
Well, this subject is such that the importance, you cannot really underestimate. It's something that is of very high importance, for the society, for the journalist himself, and then for the general well-being of the country.
Yeah, and in looking at the concerns that we're trying to highlight right now, talk about the coercive instrument of the government, whether it's the police, the military, the DSS, and all the other paramilitary agencies that we have right now. From your experience, what does that tell you about how this institution of government views journalists as a whole?
Well, the various state agencies, especially the security agencies, they don't see the journalists as their friend, which is a very unfortunate thing, because at this point, at the stage we have got to as a nation, I don't think this is something that should be so recurrent in our body politic. But unfortunately, this is what we see every now and then, and it is not the best for this society.
And do you think that over the years that the security agencies, whether by omission or commission, have built this disdain for journalists simply because much of the work that we do in this profession has to do with exposing facts and figures and information to the public that other people would rather have kept in secret?
Sure. You have hit at the point. Yes, of course. Because of what we do, calling people to account, holding people to account, for the actions, particularly those in government, because people don't like this, they don't want this, so they tend to use even state apparatus or apartheid, to ensure that the journalist does not do his job the way it should be done. They don't want to cooperate with us as journalists. They don't want us around them. In fact, even today I've experienced, another sort of this, matter. Earlier today, I was at the UK visa center at Ikeja, And then if you just wonder why a security agency continue to, harass journalists. In fact, I was harassed. I was harassed today. I just had to stand my ground, and then when they saw that, they just had to back off. So it's a recurrent thing. It's what we experience every day. But it's just so unfortunate that our society, still there harbors, people with that kind of a mindset against the journalists.
And what do you think is responsible for poisoning this relationship between the security architecture and journalists? I mean, granted, we do have in so many instances some healthy relationships and collaborations, but it does appear that when push comes to shove, the relationship is at its worst when journalists like you, for instance, get intimidated on a regular basis. Is this relationship salvageable in your view?
Well, I think a lot will have to be done about correcting the situation, because this is something that has become entrenched within the circle of the security agencies. They have been made to see journalists as their enemy. And so people in government, people in power, people in the corridors of power, they use them against the journalists. And because this thing has been, occurring over decades now, the secret agencies have become used to this attitude. Their worldview about the journalists is quite, not something that is palatable. So, but I believe that, with some education, with some reorientation, maybe the situation can change.
Using your case back in March this year as a case in point, what do you think the media profession, the journalism community, for instance, need to do to turn things around? Because a little earlier I was speaking to Barrister Toby of the IPI, the International Press Institute, and he was talking about how we need a lot more legislation that can protect and guarantee some security or healthy environment for practicing journalists in this country. What are your views on that?
Well, I think I will toe his line. I believe that the National Assembly now should, put in place, better laws, stronger laws that can protect the journalists in the course of duty. Because the fact that there are no extant laws, that protect the journalists. And that is why security agencies and other non-state actors, exploit this, to harass, intimidate, and even, attack journalists. So if you have, very good laws, very strong laws in place, then I think this will, drastically reduce the incidence of, attacks and harassment of journalists.
When you were arrested, I remember, whether it's print or broadcast, there was a chorus of support, chorus of condemnation, calling for your release, and so on and so forth. But also speaking to Barrister Toby a little earlier, he made, the point that while there's some measurable solidarity within the community, there is a lack of coordination, because these political figures understand the power of the pen or the voice of journalists, for instance, but we're not leveraging enough of those relationships to see a much healthy, safe environment for journalists in this country. Do you believe that we can do more in leveraging some of our relationship with people in power, with civil society, for instance, to bring about this much needed change?
Well, of course, yes, we can. We can if there's that unity. If the various stakeholders, if they can, really come together and join their hands, I think we can achieve a lot. And in my own case, at first, I still, keep thanking everybody for, that deluge of support, that I got, from everybody. But, after my release, and then, I think some things happened, and, things that are not palatable to say, about the whole situation. And then a lot of them had to, they had to withdraw, so to say, from the joint actions they had earlier planned to take, course of action they had earlier planned to take, many of them, had to withdraw due to one reason or the other. But I feel this is not too good. This is not too good enough, in that kind of a situation, because if you keep doing this, we keep giving these people, that leeway to continue to, maltreat journalists and all that.
Yeah. And looking at the politics of the situation, right? We know that political figures or politically exposed persons run or operate some of the biggest media houses or publishing houses that we have in the country. Do you believe that that is also a part of the conundrum that we have to deal with?
Of course it is. It is, because many of these and then owners of the media, they also have their own interests. They have their own friends in government. They want to protect them. In fact, they are ready. Many of them are often ready to throw you, the journalists, under the bus if the need arises. Like it happened in my own case. My organization then, they had to write a kind of an apology. And I was surprised, because I don't think the situation then called for that. They did that, and I had no other option than to immediately resign, from that place.
And being the sacrificial lamb in that instance, do you fear that there are many other journalists who are unable to do their job in a safe environment because they have to worry about the consequences of doing their jobs?
Of course, virtually all the journalists in Nigeria are under this, they are in this very tight corner, because, unless you are not working for anybody, if you are working for somebody, somebody pays your salaries, which is not, definitely, your publisher or the owner of the media will have his own interests. And so once you go against that interest, whether knowingly or unknowingly, then you should be ready to, carry the can. That is it.
And from your experience, as traumatic as it has been, what does that tell you about the perception of the personnel who carry out those clandestine orders of arresting journalists, of intimidating them? Because there are several others who are in detention right now, whose cases are still pretty much being adjudicated behind the scenes, because some of them are not even, brought before the court to be charged for whatever it is that they are allegedly being charged with by some of these security agencies. What does your experience tell you about what these security personnel actually think about the work that we as journalists do on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, well, many of them, they consider us also as important. But the problem with them is that, once they get these orders, maybe from the politicians at the top or whatever guy at the top, once they get these orders from them, then, they goes into their head and then they carry out the orders, even without thinking sometimes, because it's so unfortunate that, we still find ourselves in this kind of situation, at this age, at this point in time, at this, current situation that the country is in. I don't think things like that should be happening. And I think a lot has to do with those people in power, those in the corridors of power. Because without they giving or issuing orders to these people, they wouldn't, be that emboldened to, carry out this, most of the time, illegal operations against, journalists.
And in your view, looking at where we are coming from, where we are right now, and where we would love to head towards, right? We talk about the legislation and things like that. Are we turning a corner? Because the data suggests that, while this year could be just 2 or 3 journalists, you never can tell. 2 years from now, it could be 10, 100 journalists that have been incarcerated or that have been wrongly accused or that have been illegally detained by one agency or the other. Do you get a sense that things are getting better with all the enlightenment, with all the publicity some of these cases like yours, for instance, have garnered and successfully grabbed the attention of the public?
Oh, well, for me, I don't think things are getting better. I think things are getting worse, because this time last year, I'm not sure that the number of journalists that suffered this kind of harassment or arrest, that the number was as high as we have already had this year. Between August 1 and 10, when we had the nationwide End Bad Governance protest, I think over 50 journalists, were harassed, attacked, and then done all kinds of things by mostly security agents, and then some hoodlums. So things are not getting better. But I think with some reorientation, with some education, and backed upon by maybe the high commands of the various security agencies, then maybe in collaboration with maybe senior journalists and some of these our unions, I think we can now start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel.
Is this, is there a part of you that believes that this is just the price we have to pay? The cross that you have to carry because you are a journalist, because it's a global phenomenon, as we all know. Journalists are being harassed, targeted, assassinated, killed in several other parts of the world. Is this something that we just have to get used to?
Oh, well, yeah, I think it's something we're already used to. it's what we're already used to, because most of us, we don't have any other means of livelihood. We don't have any other job. Despite the harassment and all that, you still have to continue to do your job, do your duty to the society, because when you're harassed and you chicken out, I don't know what else you want to do. For me, I am not a politician. I have never held any political appointment, in my life, and so this is what I know, and this is what I will keep doing. Whatever the situation is, I will keep serving the society.
Right, and we do have a lot of people who are also incarcerated or who are also being violated in this particular manner by the same agency. Then it might not be your clear-cut journalist. There might be some activist or some civilian out there who is just willing to share certain information to draw attention to a particular issue or particular wrongdoing. Some have categorized them as whistleblowers, for instance. The Labour Party's presidential candidate in the 2023 election just this Tuesday highlighted how this dangerous trend of always targeting people, putting out certain information that may be true on social media because of its impact on the powers that be is bad omen for Nigeria going forward. Do you fear that, if professionals are not safe, everybody else could also be targeted by security agents?
Yes, sure. Because for people who have a lot to account for and who are not willing to be accountable to anybody, they will do anything to ensure that their positions are protected. And that is why we'll keep having this recurrent issue of harassment, attacks, and all that on journalists, on citizen journalists, on whistleblowers. Whoever has that whoever has that maybe some kind of anything to do with spreading information. In fact, we are an endangered species. Those of us who are journalists, citizen journalists, and whistleblowers, we are all in the same boat.
Do you think this intolerance has become institutionalized in our society today, so much so that just blowing the whistle or drawing attention through an investigative piece to expose what is wrong within the system or what is wrong in society has now become a wrong thing to do, so to say? Do you think that this intolerance is now systemic in our institutions?
Oh, well, I think the intolerance is even entrenched because this is not a military rule. Some of us, were old enough to witness the various military regimes that ruled this country until 1999. And then, since the return of democracy, I don't think journalists have had it so bad as we have had since, particularly the beginning of this year. And I don't think that is good enough. I think the authorities themselves should do something. This is a democracy, but and then it should we should exhibit all the how do I put it now? It's a democracy, and so it should have all the ingredients demonstrated by everyone in government, whether high or low, whether in Aso Rock or wherever, they should be tolerant of the media, because the media is also very important. In fact, it is of great importance, because without the media, cannot be what it should be. Without the media, there will nobody to call anybody to account, and so people can, people in power can be arbitrary. They can be, they can be autocratic, and this is what we are gradually witnessing. And I think there should be people in this. Those in power, they should try steps, because this is a democracy, so that our democracy will not be harmed in any way.
Right. And Mr. Olatunji, just on that particular point, a lot of people who are reading up on the history of this particular issue would say we've come a long way from letter bombs and killer squads targeting people to just arrest. As illegal as they may be, detention is in your case. That obviously that this is a big departure from what used to be under the military era. But you're alluding to how things are getting worse.
Well, yes, it may be a departure, but not really remarkable, because people are still being arrested, journalists are still being arrested, tortured, and then incarcerated, illegally, because that's what happened in my own case, and it also happened in cases of some other journalists. These are things that we should not even witness under a democracy, and because in fact I still find it curious that the military, the police, they still exhibit this mentality, and they see the journalists as an enemy of the state, whereas that is not the situation. That should not be.
Yeah. A very good point for us to anchor the conversation here, Mr. Segun Olatunji, former editor of First News. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, and we do appreciate your contributions tonight. Thank you most kindly for your thoughts.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, and that is our offering for you on Daily Politics tonight. Do well to follow us across our social media platforms just to stay in touch. You can also visit our website, trusttv.com, to check out this episode and many others in the past, and also to catch up on many other news stories and programs. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. We'll be back tomorrow live at 8 p.m. Until then, good night.